Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton, and I'm pleased to share the mic with Greg Matusak.
Oh, I'm so happy to be back. Thank you guys for keeping my seat warm.
Where the heck have you been?
Oh my goodness, it's hard to be good at several jobs and whatnot, and to be an in-demand musician. And I'm going to stop being good at what I do. But as a common sense liberal from Cincinnati, I'm here for you guys this week.
And DJ McGuire is with us.
That's right. I am back, folks, and I'm pleased to see Greg back. He skips the 1 week. His state is important. That's Greg. But he's back, so we can hear from him about the Ohio Senate race. Looking forward to that.
And Rebecca Kushmiter is on a well-deserved vacation this week. I believe she is in South Carolina. Is that correct?
I think so.
It's
something to do with horses, I believe.
Yeah, one of those places. So, Rebecca, we're thinking of you and missing you, and hope you're having a great time. So every week, I ask my compatriots here if there are any topics other than politics that we can cover, because I think the show is a little too politics heavy. And yet, once again, we have more or less failed to reach that lofty goal. Politics has infested us like bed bugs. Once again, that's the lead story on our podcast, because the House of Representatives has become the House of Horrors. DJ, why don't you start by talking about the budget that passed? I understand nothing about what happened. I don't know what passed, who passed it, what's in it, what's not in it. Please enlighten me.
Sure. The 6 cabinet departments that were responsible for about 70% of the discretionary budget had not been fully funded for the year until this weekend. That was finally done after about 4 continuing resolutions. The House quote, freedom, unquote, caucus wanted more bullshit than they actually got. So they're all mad. Marjorie Taylor Greene is so mad, she actually filed one of those motions to vacate that she is threatening to force the House to look at after they're back from their 2-week recess. But it doesn't include anything particularly weird, unfortunately, nor does it include any funding for Ukraine, which has me really mad. And I'm hoping that Democrats actually tell the speaker, hey, look, if you want to avoid losing your job, you have to put the Ukraine bill on the floor and get it passed.
It almost makes me question, and I know you guys are going to be shocked, Marjorie Taylor Greene's intelligence at this point.
Let's talk about this Ukraine funding. Are we any closer now than we were, let's say, 2 weeks ago? And is it to Johnson's strength or to his detriment that the Ukraine funding bill has not been brought to the floor?
It's because he doesn't want a split in his party. Half his party wants it, half his party doesn't. That looks bad for him. Now, if he's in a situation where he gets defenestrated, and this is why I think that the Green resolution helps, the Green motion helps the Democrats, because the Democrats can come in and say, hey, look, you tried to keep this quiet. You tried to keep this in the family. It is now blown out all over the place. You can either lose your job, we'll all vote against you, or you can do what we want, and here's our list of things. And Ukraine should be at the top of the list because it is the most urgent one right now.
Well, let me ask this, Greg. Do you think that Johnson is avoiding bringing this to the floor because he's trying to protect his speakership, or do you think he's doing it, and this is a leading question now, I admit that, do you think he's doing it because that's what Trump wants and Mike Johnson wants to be in power with Trump as president?
Yes.
To the both. Second.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a correct answer, Greg.
I knew you'd like that answer. I mean, we are just so lucky that he hasn't cut his own nose off to spite his face. Because he is that guy. He is a hardliner. He doesn't believe in banks, for goodness sake. He will go the distance for Trump. He will go the distance for his causes. He's a true believer, which should terrify everybody. And even the threat of losing your job, that's awesome, because he knows down the road he will be rewarded either by his God or his higher God, Trump. Either way, he's going to be fine.
Okay, now let's talk about people who are showing some spine, some backbone. and that's the Republicans who are part of the mass exodus from Congress. And I actually read this on a Reddit subthread, is it a mass exodus or is it in effect a mass purge? Because what I think is happening here is these GOP Congress people are realizing that if they stay in Congress, they have to become MAGA sycophants to the point where they will have to do things that they do not believe in, support bills, legislation, and support a president that they cannot get behind. And the alternative to that is getting primaried. So they tendered their resignation, but really they're, in a sense, being forced out.
I think that they are afraid of, even though there are place guards and safeguards in place, that they are going to make sure that there is not a Republican majority come January 6th this year. And this is their way of saving the Republican Party.
Okay, first of all, that is utterly ludicrous. I mean, these are people who, for the most part, do not have any spine to speak of whatsoever. They are not going to be thinking, they're certainly not going to be thinking, oh, this is a double bank shot to protect the Republican Party from itself. They do not care about any of those things. I think Kevin is closer to being correct. I think it is a matter of they are making calculations and they're saying, okay, how much of a sycophant can I be? And the ones who can't be 100% sycophants are stepping away. They're going to start looking more maybe at running for governor or things, places where they think they have a little more leeway. They don't, as they'll figure out in 2026, if God forbid Trump wins. But it's not about making sure there's no Republican majority in 2025. There are going to be no Republicans who will act, except for Liz Cheney, who will actively work against a House Republican majority in 2025. The voters this year have to do that. We're the ones who have to take power away from the Republicans in the House, not whatever the hell Greg is not thinking.
I'm a little deep state. Yeah.
I'm a little deep state. I think that could be a good country song.
Exactly. To add to that, we saw local signs here for like state reps and things like that, where 5-10 years ago, it would say Republican approved or things like that. This year, many of the signs said Trump approved.
Wow. The number of lawmakers that are retiring, I just saw this in an article this morning, stands at 44 altogether who have announced their retirements so far, which is actually not that high a number compared to other midterm and 4-year election cycles. It's 23 Democrats who are abandoning seats and 21 Republicans. But my understanding is that most of the Republicans, if not all of them, are in fairly safe red districts where some of the Democratic seats might be more competitive. Hence, it might actually be giving an advantage to the Republicans in terms of maintaining control of Congress.
What it looks like, and I'm just ruling this very briefly, is that a lot of the Democrats who are retiring are not actually retiring. They're not retiring from politics. They're looking at another office. Like a bunch of them are running for United States Senate. A few Abigail Spanberger is running for governor here in Virginia. Dean Phillips was the quixotic presidential candidate, and Jeff Jackson was for attorney general. The point is that it's not that the Democrats who are retiring are just disillusioned with how terrible things are. They're looking to move up to other offices. They're looking to move up to statewide offices. But the Republicans almost universally are the ones who are like, I can't handle this crap anymore. I'm out of here. What Donald Trump is doing is he's literally wiping out his own bench. And I'm not sure whether that's a happy accident or by design, but it doesn't matter because the result is the same. There isn't going to be any real alternative to Donald Trump in the Republican Party because they're all saying, I don't want no part of this. I'm heading for the exits. I'm going to retire to my farm or whatever the hell I'm doing.
Or lobbyist or
whatever. Or, something on NBC, but by next to Ronna McDaniel.
I was going to bring that up.
I don't know what NBC is doing with that one. You want center-right voices, but Ronna McDaniel is not a center. This is a woman who dropped her maiden name to keep Donald Trump happy. This is a Trump sycophant. You need fewer of those on TV, not more of them.
Yeah, she's no Nicole Wallace. She is no Michael, the former
Michael
chairman.
Steele.
Michael Steele, thank you.
Michael Steele or Charlie Sykes or anybody like that.
She is not in that category. So let's talk about the presidential campaign. Apparently, it was a good week for Biden. If you look at some of the polls that came out, he seems to be doing better in a few new polls. So, DJ, can you sum up for us where the changes seem to be, if they're not mirages, where the improvements seem to be?
Biden seems to be doing better in some national polls than we had seen previously. Usually with national polls, he was either within the margin of error or behind. Now, for the most part, they're all within the margin of error, and he is ahead in some and he's behind in some.
Okay, so the problem with polls, and this is not a Polish joke, but they're inconsequential, and they have actually always been inconsequential, going back to 1948, where Harry Truman famously defied the polls to maintain the presidency. You know, polls, I think, were originally devised for campaigns, for internal campaign use to determine, one, how to refine their messaging, and two, how to use their resources to best effect. And because of the media, polls became a public consumption like junk food. And we have to get away from that, because I think everybody understands now, having seen two presidential cycles in a row, where in one, the person who got the most votes did not win. And in the second, the person who got 7 million more votes won by a hair. The popular vote, unfortunately, does not determine the presidency. I'm not saying it's not important, and that's a whole other topic. I can go on about that for 20 minutes, and I won't this week. But there are only 6 states that really will determine this presidency. They are Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. Possibly throw in North Carolina, although I think that's, no pun intended, a red herring. Really, I think it comes down to 2 states, Michigan and Pennsylvania. And I wouldn't trust the polls in those states. It is a get out the vote election. And we Democrats, if you care about defeating Trump, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit, you have to get out your vote and get out other votes, because that is the only thing that counts.
I do not disagree with anything Kevin said. I'm just adding to it. Is that they will get their samples wrong. Trying to move from registered voters to likely voters is what we'll start to see over the next 6 months, is the hardest part of polling in general, because then you have to figure out who you think is actually going to vote, who you think isn't going to vote, and work accordingly. If you get it wrong, as famously Gallup did in 1948, because they did a telephone poll and they literally could not poll people who did not have telephones, well, you're going to have a pro-Republican 1940s bias in your poll, and that's exactly what happened to Gallup. If, like the New York Times in Siena College, you do a poll where 36% of your sample is rural voters, which hasn't been the case for 40 or 50 years, by the way, you're going to get a pro-Republican poll, and that's exactly what the Times in Siena came up with. So if you want to trust a poll, you want somebody who has good experience in sampling and can read the changes in the political zeitgeist so that they can get the samples right, which is to say there is really no pollster that you can 100% trust. Hell, Gallup's 2012 poll was so off it hasn't done presidential polls since then, because they had Mitt Romney ahead in the popular vote on election day morning. The UK 2015, the UK 2017.
2018 red wave midterms,
right?
And the 2022 red wave midterms.
You're correct.
Yeah.
So you're really in no position to have any idea how well the pollster is doing their sampling. And if you don't know how well the pollster is doing your sampling, you really can't trust the poll.
Here's a good sample. It's the Never Again Trump contingent. I think we might be of different minds on this. So first, I'm going to list a long string of names, and then we can discuss whether these people are, as DJ put it on our rundown, for real or not. Mike Pence, Bill Barr, John Bolton, Mitt Romney, John Kelly, James Mattis, Mike Esper, Mark Milley, Anthony Scaramucci, Stephanie Grisham, Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, Liz Cheney, John Kasich. We could go on and on. These are all people who have come out in the media and said they cannot and will not support Donald Trump. Now, whether that means they won't vote for him, some of them have said those words, some of them have only alluded to it. But I think what is one of the keys to Biden's chances for winning election is to get some of those people to go one step further and say, because a Trump presidency is so anathema to the future of this country and the future of the planet, I will be voting for Joe Biden, even though I do not agree with many of his policies. They need a few of those people to make that leap so that it can give permission to other GOPers who are anti-Trump to make the same leap. Why should Democrats settle for one less Trump vote when they can double the impact by making it a Biden vote?
So here's the problem. A lot of the people on the list have lost their credibility, not only with Democrats, obviously, but also with Republicans. Mike Pence does not get an award for saying that he will not support or even vote for Donald Trump in 2024 after what happened on January 6th, 2020. 4 years have passed. Okay. And both sides do not trust this man. Okay. Bill Barr, same thing. Chris Christie. A lot of these people have been supporting him until their futures maybe or their pocketbooks don't work anymore. And with that in mind, they don't have credibility with the general public. So I agree. There should be maybe one focused campaign, an ad like these are the people who Donald Trump hired. This is his administration. They won't vote for him. Why should you?
Okay. So now that we're all in violent agreement on that, let's go to what we've all been looking for, talking about Ohio with Greg.
It's round on the ends and high in the middle. Yeah, we had our primary this week, and for the most part, it wasn't that exciting. We knew Joe Biden and Donald Trump are already the candidates. We knew they were going to win, but the big race was for Senate on the Republican side. There were three major candidates, and Bernie Moreno, who is a luxury car dealer who was born in Colombia, and he won, but he was also the Trump appointee. I don't know how you want to say that.
He was given Trump's blessing.
Yes, he was touched by the hand of Trump. I mean, in Ohio, those ads were pretty nasty, and it seems like Trump has a pretty bad record as far as his picks. I mean, if we think about like Dr. Oz, if we think about Georgia, but Ohio is, as I hate to say that, DJ's right, has been pretty red these past couple of years. But he's going against an established incumbent. Sherrod Brown has been in office since 2006. He's a very progressive, and this would be the year he's the weakest. It also doesn't help Bernie Moreno that 20% of the votes went to Nikki Haley, and she was already out of the race. So this is probably going to be the race to watch for the U.S. Senate. With Trump running the RNC now, they're not going to have as much support. And when I say support, I mean money. And with Biden having a giant war chest, I think Brown is going to have a lot of money. And I hate to think that it comes down to money, but as we all know, it comes down to money.
Greg, can you answer two questions for me?
There are two professional football teams in Ohio, the Bengals and the Buckeyes.
That was not my question. That was not my question. Funny, but that's not my question.
Thanks.
One, first, because we the Democrats had probably their best candidate for Ohio, at least we think, their best candidate for Ohio in 2022 and Congressman Tim Ryan.
Yes.
The Republicans put up J.D. Vance, and Vance still won by about 7 or 8 points. Part one, what is the difference between Moreno and J.D. Vance in terms of appearance, in terms of perception? And number two, what advantages does Sherrod Brown have that Tim Ryan didn't have in 2022? Are there reasons for optimism because of it's Moreno versus Brown versus Vance versus Ryan 2 years ago?
I'm going to go in backwards order. We've had two elections since then that have swung pretty heavily. One was the abortion voter initiative, and that was very, very. I think that passed by 65-45. I mean, it was a very blue thing. And then there was another one, I can't remember what it was, but it also went, it was locals. It was like school boards and stuff. And we voted out almost every Moms for Liberty candidate. People are showing up. Mike DeWine on Friday came out to endorse Bernie Moreno. And he started his speech by saying, "Hey, I want to tell you what's wrong with kids in school today. It's cell phones. We got to get cell phones out of school," right? Like, this is the issue. And parents are already like, wait a second, but we need them in case of emergencies, like active shooters. Will you do something about that? And he's like, whoa. Let's not go after guns. That's crazy talk. It's not guns.
It's cell phones.
It's cell phones. It's cell phones. And he goes, well, maybe this is a little more complicated. He goes, oh, by the way, here's Bernie Moreno. And although DeWine is a relatively popular person, DeWine put his face on the abortion voter initiative and got trounced. And I think you're seeing more activism. You're seeing more involvement in the Democratic process in Ohio. Bernie Moreno has a fight on his hands. I mean, it's not going to be a layup for him. J.D. Vance versus Tim Ryan. First of all, Sherrod Brown is an incumbent. He's an incumbent since 2006. He's someone we know. Tim Ryan ran a horrible campaign where he'd be seen with all these auto worker guys wearing just like the worst shirts. Like, well, yes, I do fit in here in a $300 shirt. And It didn't work well. J.D. Vance had really slick campaigns. Bernie Moreno does not. It's not going to be as simple.
So let's move on to Georgia, where Fani Willis says the train is coming. The midnight train to Georgia is coming for Trump.
Woo woo!
She was at some kind of an Easter egg hunt or something like that, and she gave an interview off the cuff to a CNN reporter. And among the things that she said was Trump is trying to delay, but her office has been actively pursuing the case, filing motions, writing responses to motions every day during this whole kerfuffle about whether or not she's going to stay on the case or not. And she said, they may be trying to delay it, but the train is coming. The train is coming.
The line that she said that I read, and I'm not going to get this verbatim, was where she said, I have done nothing wrong.
Yes.
I had a relationship with a man and there was nothing illegal about it.
And I'm not embarrassed about it.
And I'm not embarrassed about it. And I think that's super important that this very highly respected woman who is in a position of authority and she worked very hard all her life has been dragged through the mud by the national media for having a relationship with a man.
While she was trying to prosecute a man who has had multiple relationships, including being charged and essentially found guilty of rape. And so the fact that they're trying to make her sexuality some kind of a negative is just so insulting to the intelligence of the American voter. So I've seen a lot of people in social media and in the news media saying there's no way that case can be tried and come to a conclusion before the election because it is such a complicated case. I want to address that. It's probably true that if she was to get a trial date that started in mid to late August, that might be too late for her to prosecute the entire case to bring it to a jury for verdict. But if she can start that case in August or September, she could present the the state's case before the election. And let's remember, there are cameras in the courtrooms in Georgia. A lot of that material is going to get out to the public. Plus, they're going to see photographs and drawings of Donald Trump sitting behind a criminal defense table, sitting helplessly with his dumb mug there, being angry, for 2 months during the general election cycle. You know what? As much as I would like to have a conviction before the election, I will settle for hearing the state's case and then let the multitude of defense attorneys wrestle for who gets to make what counter argument at what point, because that's all going to happen after the election.
Yeah, absent a really crushing cross-examination, which I can't really expect from the idiots that Donald Trump has as his attorneys, the prosecution presenting its case is going to damage Donald Trump politically every single day.
Exactly.
How much it's not going to take anyone from his base, but with swing voters going to be like, oh, someone says he did what? Someone says he did what? Someone says he did what?
Yes.
It will remind everyone about all of those things.
Yes.
And you're right. That has some value, whether or not the jury gets the case before Election Day.
Okay, so let's finally get away from politics and talk about the world of entertainment, where there are 3 remakes out there right now. Roadhouse, there's a new version of that on Amazon. Shogun, there's a new version of that on Netflix. And Dune Part 2 is a sequel to the Dune from 2021, also an adaptation of the novel by Frank Herbert, and a remake of several prior Dune flicks that came out in the 80s and 90s. So with all that said, guys, I wanted to throw it to you and get your impressions. Have you seen any of these? And if so, did you like them?
We'll start with Roadhouse. I think it just came out on Friday, and I watched it like within minutes. I love the original. It's awesome. Patrick Swayze forever. But this one stars Jake Gyllenhaal, stars UFC legend Conor McGregor. It is so enjoyable and dumb. And halfway through, you go, this plot makes no sense whatsoever. I was literally saying, what is going on? I have no idea. All the problems are solved by punching people, and I loved it. I would watch this thing. In fact, I may rewatch it today now that I'm not playing. Jake Gyllenhaal is one of the few actors who can play serious. He can play comedy. He can sing. He is like a quadruple threat. Highly recommended. 10 out of 10, much better than the Dune remakes.
DJ, any thoughts?
I have not seen the remake. I barely remember seeing the original. I'm just going to leave that to one side. I haven't seen neither the original nor the remake on Shogun, but I've seen some reviews about Shogun, about the remake, and about how it is. The characters are more 3-dimensional. They are more complex. It appears to be more of a Japanese perspective, which I think will be helpful. I have not seen the second part of the 2020s Dune, but it's got to be better than the 1980s Dune. Oh. No one can take that novel and shove it into 2 hours. No one should have tried. And anyone who did try should recognize that it was going to be a failure from the outset. Now, I will give it that it was a noble failure. It had Patrick Stewart. It had Richard Jordan. It had Brad Dourif. It had a very good cast.
Sting and Kyle MacLachlan.
But you can't compress it into 2 hours. I'm not even sure it can do well compressed into 4 or 5 hours. Frank Herbert's novels are the kinds of things that you do a 10 episode series for Netflix, and his entire work in that universe is something that should be a 6 or 7 season show on a Netflix or an Amazon or something like that. The more time you give Frank Herbert's novels, the better it will be.
I agree.
5 hours is better than 2 hours. 10 hours is better than 5 hours.
Oh yeah. There should be, I agree 100%, a 10-part, 12-part miniseries with someone not Timothée Chalamet.
And who could be a better Baron Harkonnen than Stella Skarsgård?
Stella Skarsgård is, you're right. We will agree. We should end on that before our friendship deteriorates over Dune, which I've lost friends over that book. I have lost friends, and I have told family members, you are dead to me.
Well, speaking of noble failures, we want to thank everybody for listening. to a podcast that went longer than, producing a Dune movie using every page in the book. But if you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. And don't forget to share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And as always, we are forever grateful to Alan Keeney for our theme music. With that in mind, gentlemen, who will be making beautiful music and where this coming week?
Not me. I'm taking the week off. I'm going to reread Dune the way it should be experienced in book form, with the only way it should be.
I do hope I will be able to lay down some music tracks for Yesterday's Future, the album that I am working on. I was able to get 2 done last week. I'm hoping to get a few more done this week.
Fantastic. Okay, that's a podcast.